Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Metropolis Radio, and today, as I am recording this video, Black Panther Wakanda Forever just came out. Now, I've already done a video on Black Panther, a prediction video on Black Panther Wakanda Forever's box office that says that it'll have a great opening weekend, but the second weekend drop-off might not be as good. And so the topic that I want to discuss today is that opening weekend box office really does not matter in the grand scheme of things. In fact, I think more and more bloggers and analysts really need to get away from focusing on opening weekend box office numbers. And I've got three reasons for why opening weekend box office really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And the first point we're going to touch on is it doesn't say anything about quality. Right, and the example I'm going to use is Transformers. Right, if you look at the opening weekend box office numbers of all the Transformers movies, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen had the largest opening weekend of any Transformers movie thus far as of the recording of this video. Who knows, by the time you watch this, there might be 20 more Transformers movies. Anyway, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. It had a opening weekend of $108,966,307 just opening weekend. I believe that was domestically. So, by the logic of Transformers Revenge of the Fallen had the biggest opening weekend of any Transformers movie, that must mean that Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is the absolute best Transformers movie ever made. Now, we all know that that's complete BS because if you ask anybody, they'll tell you that Revenge of the Fallen is the second worst Transformers movie behind Age of Extinction, but if you're going to use opening weekend box office numbers as a metric for quality, then Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is the absolute best Transformers movie ever made. Also, look at what happened with Star Wars Episode 8, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Article from Variety. I'm not going to read it word for word, just the headline. Box office. Star Wars The Last Jedi soars to $220 million opening weekend. Now, to put this into context, Star Wars The Force Awakens opened to roughly $250 million when that released in 2015. But so we look at this and it's like, okay, The Last Jedi opened to only $30 million less than The Force Awakens did, which isn't bad. However, with The Last Jedi, that is the most divisive Star Wars movie that has ever released. And if you look at the second weekend box office drop, it was 67% between week 1 and week 2. Which again, to put that into context, in 2017, that was almost unheard of to have a second weekend box office of 67%. Nowadays, it's almost the norm, but back in 2017, a normal second weekend box office drop would be anywhere between 40 and 45%. And that's why you still have a lot of these YouTube channels and podcasters coming out and saying, hey, a small vocal minority would not have been capable of pulling a number like that, of actually causing a second weekend drop-off of 67%. And they're not exactly wrong when they make that statement. It's not just a strong vocal minority that was responsible for that second weekend drop-off. Anyway, I've tangented, but getting into my next point is that let's actually look at Marvel's second weekend drop-offs. Again, all of these movies, Black Widow onwards, they've been posting about, huge opening weekends, but what they're not reporting on is all of the second weekend drop-offs. Again, Black Widow had a drop-off of 68% going into its second weekend, and the common criticism with Black Widow is, oh, that was a day-and-date release on Disney+, so it's not fair to judge that movie just based on its box office numbers, blah-blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings comes out. Opening weekend, I think they were saying, was like $95 million over Labor Day at the global box office. But if you look at it domestically, it was only about $75 million. Okay, so week two drop-off was a 54%. Eternals had a 62% drop-off. Even Spider-Man No Way Home had a 67% drop-off between weeks 1 and 2. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 67% week 2 drop-off. Thor Love and Thunder, 68% week 2 drop-off. And if we look at a non-Marvel movie, even look at, something like Black Adam, which is the new DC movie, even that had a massive second weekend drop-off of 59%. So again, while every single movie blogger and YouTube channel and podcast focuses on opening weekends, what they're refusing to focus on is what is that second weekend drop-off. Does this movie actually have any legs going into the box office? Which brings me into my third and final point, in that this is just a bunch of free marketing. Look at headlines like this, like I brought up Variety. Star Wars The Last Jedi soars to $220 million opening. Or a headline like this from Vox. Captain Marvel is officially a $1 billion box office hit. Also coming from Variety, Spider-Man No Way Home lands third biggest global debut ever with $587 million. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales crosses $500 million at global box office. Star Wars The Last Jedi takes $450 million on opening weekend. Right? So what the studios are hoping for with regards to a big opening weekend is that it gets their name in the paper, so to speak. Right? You get those glamorous headlines that, hey, we had a very strong opening weekend. That must equate to quality. Well, we've already gone over that a strong opening weekend box office says absolutely nothing about the movie's quality, but still, ask yourself this question: how much value are headlines like this, like Star Wars The Last Jedi soars to $220 million on opening weekend? How valuable of a headline is that for Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Corporation? And another thing that a lot of these media outlets will do is that if the movie does not have a strong domestic opening weekend, what they do is that they shift to look at the global box office. Like, I'm going to bring this up with Vox. Captain Marvel is officially a $1 billion box office hit. Now, what is that headline not telling you? They're saying it's a $1 billion box office hit, but is that domestically, or is that or is that at the global box office, or is it a combination of the two? You have to actually go down into the article with here. In its 3.5 weeks or so in theaters, Captain Marvel has hauled $358 million domestically and $645 million internationally to bring its worldwide total a little over the $1 billion mark, according to Variety. But still, if you read the headline alone, the headline itself is not telling you that the $1 billion box office is a cross between the domestic box office and the global box office, and the fact that the global box office was bigger than the domestic, right? Spider-Man No Way Home, coming from Variety. Spider-Man No Way Home lands third biggest global debut ever with $587 million. Right? If you go back and you look at the domestic box office for Spider-Man No Way Home, it was only $260,138,569 at the domestic box office, which isn't a bad number. But if you're looking at these headlines from a marketing standpoint, what is better to report? Spider-Man No Way Home soars to... Hold on, I want to make sure I get the number right. Okay, Spider-Man No Way Home soars to $260 million at the box office, or Spider-Man No Way Home lands third biggest global debut ever with $587 million. We come over to Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales, crosses $500 million at the global box office. But if we look at the domestic box office in particular for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales, it only grossed $62,983,253 at the domestic box office. So again, which headline is better? Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales soars to $62 million box office opening weekend, or Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales crosses $500 million at the global box office. Even if you look at The Last Jedi, which of these two headlines sounds better from a marketing standpoint? Star Wars The Last Jedi soars to $220 million opening weekend, or Star Wars The Last Jedi takes $450 million on opening weekend? I honestly hope that you pick the latter over the former. But what the latter is not telling you is that $450 million on opening weekend is taking both US and Canada box office, which is domestic box office, and international box office, whereas the Variety headline for Star Wars The Last Jedi soars to $220 million opening weekend is only taking domestic box office into account and not global. So I know I've gone on for longer than 10 minutes, so I'm going to end the video off with this. I think we as movie fans need to move on past just looking at opening weekend box office numbers, because as I've brought up in this video, opening weekend box office numbers doesn't say jack shit about quality. And what honestly is going to matter more is what is that second weekend drop-off rate. That's what I'm more interested in from an analytical point of view. I don't give a shit if Black Panther Wakanda Forever goes on to gross $500 million opening weekend. Okay, great for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, but what is that second weekend drop-off going to be? Is it going to be like every other Marvel movie where the second weekend drop off is anywhere between 55 to 70%, or is it going to be that exception to the rule that only drops by 33%, like what Top Gun Maverick did? And also you have to take into account, you know, how much free marketing all of these movie blogs and YouTubers are giving all of these movies by saying, you know, massive opening weekend. Again, once you realize that it's all marketing, then you should realize that all of these opening weekend box office numbers should be taken as complete and utter bullshit until the second weekend drop-off numbers come out. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right here before I drag this out way longer than it needs to be. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much for doing so. And if you've been following me long enough, you know I'm terrible at ending these videos, so I will just see you guys next time.